Hey, everybody, welcome back to Superpower Alliance, January 2023. We're just talking about how cold it is, and Andrew is with us virtually, but he is physically in Canada, and so he's got white outside of his window, which is beautiful snow. But I'm so happy that you're here, Andrew. You've helped my group practice significantly, and I can't wait for people to hear about your process and what you've learned along the way. And so what I'm going to do, so by the way, guys, if you haven't clued in yet, this is our month to talk about Google Ads. And Andrew is the best person to learn from when, specifically for therapists and Google Ads campaigns. So this is what he's spent a lot of time studying, learning, and working with therapists. So my first question, which is a question that I give all the guests, and you're my first non-therapist to answer this question.
Okay.
So no pressure on how you answer it.
Not feeling it, no.
I just can't wait to hear what you say, but what would you say? And I gave you a little bit of a background on what a superpower actually is. And for those listening for the first time, we're not thinking of a superpower as like your best skill, but this is actually something that you've learned to embrace. So something that maybe you used to hide or weren't really proud of, but now it's like, oh no, this is who I am. And because of this makes me XYZ, really empathic or really understand this situation. Or so Andrew, what would you say your superpower is?
So thanks for the intro first. I hope I can live up to it. But I would say in terms of the superpowers, I was thinking about this a little bit, but I would honestly say for me, I think it's overthinking. Overthinking and sometimes over worrying, which can be harmful to a point. But if you can add in just a little bit of taking action towards that, it can become also very helpful too. And so, like that sort of self-doubt, that worrying about, am I going to be able to help people? What it does is, especially when it comes to digital marketing, is that when you test out something, you're aware that, guess what, it might not work, right? So you have to put in place things and be willing and open to change them. So whenever I'm putting in place a strategy, and this was more true in the beginning, but if I'm working with a therapist and I know that they're relying on me to help them get results, that overthinking, that over worrying, it's going to lead me to question, okay, is this the best strategy? Like, is this the landing page that I built for them? Is it going to be the best one? Or does it need tweaks? Or this Google Ads strategy, this campaign, the way they were building the account, is it the best one? So that overthinking over time leads us to just test and test and test and try a lot of different iterations to eventually just keep on improving every single time. So every single time we do them for therapists, the results just get better and better and better. So if I didn't have that overthinking, if I just said, you know what, from day one, I know what I'm doing, I've done this before, if I do it, and then basically what that means is like, that result is not going to improve. Like that result I get for the first therapist, because I'm not thinking and worrying about how to get them better results, it's just going to stay the same. So as long as that overthinking can be tempered a little bit by like taking the action, like not getting paralyzed with it, then I think it can be really beneficial in terms of like helping, like not just yourself, but also helping your clients get better and better results.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's what I want in my Google Ads specialist, is an overthinker who really cares, who wants results, and is going to like work hard to figure out. And I really like what you said about the action part of it, because that's true for a lot of I think a lot of people listening could resonate with this. Could be paralyzing, right? Like, oh gosh, like I can't see. I don't know for sure. But with that, like, no, I'm going to test this out. And that's going to give me data that I need to move forward, that's what you're constantly doing. And what I'm also hearing you say is, and this kind of leads into my next question, is it's going to be very fine-tuned to the practice, where they are, what they're, it's you're not just cookie cuttering it. Like there's really you're listening for what the need is and what they already have in place. So if we can do this almost like imagine, so I know what it was like for me, but you get therapists all the time who have sort of maybe not exactly the same problem, but they're telling you, I need help. Usually some version of I want to grow my practice is what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
What do you notice? What are things like? What are people saying? What are they struggling with? And what are they looking for? What are the typical problems that they have? What do you notice they probably already tried and they're like, okay, that's not working, that's not working, that's not working. I'm going to try a Google Ads specialist.
Yeah, like I always say, like every therapy practice is different, but in terms of the challenge that they're bringing to the table, it's usually like what I call it is like lead flow or lead generation. They just don't have enough people reaching out towards their practice. And so when that happens, it doesn't matter like how good you are at therapy, how well you help your clients. It doesn't even matter how good you are on the consultation calls. If you just don't have enough people reaching out towards you to even do those initial consult calls, you're not going to be able to have enough clients to actually build up your practice. And so a lot of times, usually, like I would say 50-50, we work with solo practices, so where there's just like one person, and also work with group practices. But let's say if it's like a solo practice, usually they've been in practice for maybe a couple of years, and they're just sort of stagnant around like say 6 to 10 clients, and they just can't kind of push forward towards getting towards that full caseload, right? So they're the existing strategies, the existing marketing that they're doing, it's enough to like kind of retain where they are, but sometimes it also drops down like in the winter time or the summertime. And so they just don't have enough people reaching out towards them to then build up towards that full caseload. And if it's a group practice, then it's like, it's sort of the same thing, but to where they're very adept at marketing themselves. Like they know how to put their name out there. They know how to like, people want to work with them, but they don't know how to kind of like push that energy, push those leads then towards working with their providers, with their clinicians. And so their clinicians, now they're in a similar spot where they're at maybe say 5 to 7 clients, but they can't get their caseloads full. And that's very stressful for your group practice owner because you're like, well, now I have kind of like these mouths to feed. I need to get them clients coming in. So that's really the main thing, is just getting enough people to reach out to you. I always like to use the word demand. Like every business has a certain level of demand out there. Like if we think about Amazon has, let's say, like the most amount of demand out there, but even a private practice, there's a level of demand for your business. How many people are reaching out to you to work with you? So when you're starting out, that demand is like very low because you're just starting out. As you grow, it gets a little bit more. When we use Google Ads, we want to push that demand over the top. We want 15, 20, 30 people reaching out to you every single month. That way you can kind of filter, find out which ones are the good fits, sign them on board. If you're group practice, do the same thing before your clinicians. And so when they're like, initially when they're reaching out to us, like in terms of what they've faced, I see directories, and there's nothing wrong with directories, but they're very hit and miss. Like some cities are amazing for directories. Some cities you're never going to get hit ever, right? Some directories are better than others. So directories is a big one. Networking with other therapists, that's probably like the second most common one. So even if they know their therapists that maybe are full, they're kind of relying on them for referrals coming in. Those are the two big ones. And also they've tried some sort of social media. So whether that's posting on Facebook, posting on Instagram, now TikTok the last couple of years. But with that, what they find is that they're putting in a lot of effort into it. They're making a lot of posts, a lot of content, but they're not getting the feedback out. They're not getting people reaching out towards them because on those platforms, it's not really a guarantee who's actually reading those posts. Like if you're making posts on Instagram, are those people ready for therapy? Do they even live in your states? Can they afford your fee? And especially, and also sometimes even let's say Facebook or YouTube ads, they're not getting the high intent people who are ready right now to reach out for therapy. So that's like the most common kind of marketing methods that I see people doing before they say, okay, let me try this Google Ads thing.
Yeah, everything I tried, everything you said is what I tried. And my challenge was, as I started a group practice, it was really hard for me to translate the leads that I was getting for people wanting to see me to my team. And so that's what Andrew helped. That's what he was talking about in general. It's hard for group practices, but even, I hear what you're saying, Andrew, that no matter if it's a solo or a group practice, your goal and what you do is you help increase that demand. So it's like overflowing. So it's like now we have more than we need so that we can actually get not just clients, but like the kind of clients that want exactly what we're doing. Like you have enough to filter through and make sure it's a good fit. And, as we know, as clinicians, there's always people who, aren't as motivated, right? And so it's like you do need sort of more demand than your actual space or availability. So yeah, Google Ads is a great way. I'm curious, like, what's the process? The broad question is, how do you help them? But I remember when I reached out to you, I had been burned, right, I tried other Google Ads specialists, and it did not go well. And so everybody, I guess, has their own sort of philosophy of how to do this. And I'd love to hear from you. What would you say? Well, maybe what's your process, but what can people expect? Like if they want to do a Google Ads campaign, it's not just, this is what I didn't know. It's not just putting the ads out there. Like there's a lot more to it than that. So can you kind of give maybe some of an overview of what the process is or how you actually help clinicians?
Yeah, so with us, there's a few different components. Like our whole overarching theme is that Google Ads on their own is not just enough. Google Ads are about 50% of the battle. So even if you have a great Google Ads account, if you don't have the other pieces in place, you're only going to get maybe 50% of the results. And what that might look like is either you don't get many leads, or your cost per lead, like the cost to actually acquire a client, is very high. So your ROI isn't that very good. So for us, always the Google Ads, it's about 50% of it. But if someone wants to work with us, the very first thing that we look out for is, what's the strategy, right? Because what's sort of unique about therapy is that a therapy practice isn't the same as every other therapy practice, right? Every therapist has their own specialties, their own niches. A therapist might focus on anxiety, depression, couples, trauma, EMDR, holistic therapy. I mean, this is like just very few. So for some therapists, it can be like, well, I have all these different specialties. Which one should I focus on? Which one's being searched for in my area? Or do I have to target statewide? I'm an online therapist, or I have so all these different factors come into play. So the very first thing is we have to work out what the strategy is that we want to go forward with, meaning like what keywords, what niches do we want to target that's going to have the biggest impact on your business. A big part of that is a budget constraint, right? For a therapist, we can't you can't just spend endless thousands and thousands of dollars per month. There's a certain budget you have to put in place. And according to that, and according to where you live, what niches you can focus on, then we dictate, okay, that's how we want to focus the Google Ads. And then from there, we also have to take a look at the website. So a big part of what we do now is building websites so that are really catered towards Google Ads. So they're built specifically, so they're going to work very well. And what that looks like is, let's see if you have 100 people go towards your websites, how many of them are then converting and actually reaching out to you, to your practice. Some websites are built beautifully, so they convert very well. Some websites not so good, so they don't do so well. So let's say if they already have a website in place and looks pretty good, we'll go in there, we'll make some changes to it. We'll build our landing pages. A landing page is basically the first page someone sees once someone clicks on the ad. It's the most important thing. So we'll build some of our templates in place, put their landing pages in place. We'll work on the copywriting with them, right, to make sure that has language so that if someone reads over the copy, they buy into it. They don't just skim it. They understand the value of what you do. That way also when they reach out to you, there's a certain level of buy-in. Like they understand that you're the expert at what you do. There's a certain level of buy-in. And that way, when you have the call with them, they have a pretty good idea of what you do, and the conversation just flows a lot more naturally. And also a big part of what we do is tracking. So this is something like we've introduced a new tracking system in the last couple of months, but tracking with Google Ads is really, really important, because if you don't know exactly how much your cost per click is, how much it costs to have someone book in a consult call with you, what that cost to acquire a new client is, and also how much you're earning on the back end. So when you sign a client, how much you earn with them. If you don't know those metrics, then it's very hard to know whether your Google Ads are actually working or not. So even that's what I mean by the overthinking and like improving our own process. Even last couple of months, we've introduced now we have proprietary software for doing the tracking. So that way we can know exactly, okay, If you're spending, let's say, $500 a month on the Google ads, how much you're actually earning then over the lifetime of someone staying for therapy with you. So all those different pieces together, it all goes into it, right? And so every piece is like a part of the puzzle. Once you have all those pieces in place, that's when your Google ads are really going to take off. That's when you start getting 3, 5, 7, 10 clients per month from the Google ads. Once you get all those pieces together, then it becomes really, really effective. So we like to call it like the freedom practice system. That's just like the name we have on it, but it's just all those little parts of the puzzle to get them working well.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love it. And I remember that process with you. And one thing that stood out to me, I consider myself a pretty good writer. We had, already had pretty good website, but when I worked with you, Andrew, you had this tutorial about how to copyright. And to be honest, I was like, I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was so helpful. And yeah, just little kind of tricks to really speak to your potential client's pain. Like
Yeah.
that was like, it's not just about good writing, it's about compelling writing. So anyways, everything that you helped us put into place, even before the ad campaign, I think I'm just echoing what you're saying. They really all do work together. And then I really appreciate that tracking is so important to you, because that was a big piece for me. Is I didn't want to just like, okay, kind of blindly trust someone. I wanted to be able to know I'm going to get return on investment. Like I'm willing to spend, X number of dollars if I know that this is going to help my group and I'm going to actually, so you had a very systematic way of doing that, because that was actually part of how you were tweaking the ads themselves, I think. Is that right? Or just looking for where do we need to fine
Yeah,
tune?
like 100%. I mean, like from the Google Ads platform, once we put in place the tracking on the website, what that lets us do is we can then see if someone's actually, let's say, giving you a phone call, submitting a contact form. If you use a calendar feature, like let's say like OneSub or Calendly, you can then see if someone booked a consult call. So that data gets pushed back to the Google Ads. And then from that, we can see, okay, if we're spending a certain amount per month, this is how much the cost per lead is. And then where we've taken it to the next level, the last few months is now where it can become automatic to see from your side. Because let's say if I'm running Google ads, I don't know from your side whether those like leads are becoming clients or not, right? There has to be kind of feedback. So now we have a system even where it's just very easy from your side to go in and say, okay, this lead became a client, this is how much they've earned. And now we can just see very visually, okay, I'm spending this much per month on the ads. Here's how many clients are being signed. It also tells us which keywords. So I always kind of tell people when you start out a Google Ads account, you start out with many different keywords, right? It's necessary because we know somewhat what keywords are going to be effective for you. But once we put into action, that's when we actually know, okay, these keywords are the most effective. So by doing the tracking, we can then say, okay, this keyword for your campaign works great. Let's focus more on that one. Let's bid more on this keyword. This keyword, not so good. Let's remove it. Let's chuck it. That way we're saving spend on that one, spending more on the good keywords. That's you start to increase results over time. So it's all coming back from the feedback from that tracking.
Yeah. So it's the tracking is coming from several different places, right? And we're using all that data. Yeah, because you're right on the therapist end, and this is where we had to develop a little bit more of just a better system to track our inquiries, and then our conversion rate as well. And so all of that data helps you, and then you can see what's happening with keyword performance and that kind of thing. Yeah, and making sure we have a good foundation as far as like, what is your strategy? What is it what's going to be your best, instead of saying you do everything, right? Like what do you want people to actually come to you for? And conveying that message in a clear way, having all those pieces in place. This is a similar question, Andrew, but so I feel like you've already kind of gone here a little bit. And by the way, everybody that's here, please, if you have questions or if any of this is, we're going fast, right? Because we have a lot to cover, but if any of this is confusing to you or you want to get clarity, just put it in the chat and Jeff will make sure that he lets me know that I need to address it and Andrew can answer it. The return on investment, right? So imagine you have someone like me where I have been burned, or someone who's just like scared to spend a lot of money, right? Because it is a big investment. How do people know that they're going to get return on investment? How do you track it? Because it comes down to like actual dollars, right? It's like, I spend this much, I want to make sure that I'm getting that back and actually making more because of the investment.
Yeah, so this will be like the number that we first go over in, let's say, like an onboarding call. But the very first thing is, let's say I can show you kind of like a generic example based upon like the average of data that I've seen just from working with many different therapists, right? So usually the cost per click in Google for therapy, and now this is going to range a lot, like depending on what you're focused on, but it's usually going to range between like $3 and $6 per click because you're paying per click with Google. So let's say if it's about $4, right? Let's say if a solo therapist, they're working with me, and let's say they're spending $600 per month on the Google ads. So we can kind of work backwards from that and look at, okay, so then how much is it going to cost to actually acquire clients? So let's say they're spending $600, they're getting $4 per click. That means that over the course of a month, they're going to be getting 150 visitors to their website, right? Then we have to see, okay, so then what's the conversion rates on the website? So what that's looking at is how many of those 150 actually just reach out to you for like that initial consult, right? Again, in here, there's a bit of a range. It can be like anywhere from 5 to 20%, just depending on even what kind of strategy you're doing. But let's say 10%, again, like pretty average. So out of those 150 people, right, if 10% of them are reaching out, that means you're getting about 15 people to reach out to you on that $600 budget, right? So that's kind of like the baseline. And then again, so from those 15 leads, not every single one of them is going to become a paying client, right? I would wish that, but the reality is some people, like, they're just not good fits. You don't want to work with them. Some people, they can't afford it. Some people, perhaps even like you reach out to them, but then they already speak with another therapist, they re-sign with them. Usually the conversion rate that we see, and there are ways that we can improve this, but usually it's 1 out of 3 or 1 out of every 4 of those leads actually becomes a paying client in the practice. So basically what that means then is, so from those 15 leads, you're usually signing 3 to 5 of those clients, right? So from there, now we can actually see, so what is that cost per new client in the practice, right? So it's going to be, let's say if you signed 3 clients from that $600, that means you're paying $200 for every new client in the practice, right? If you signed 5 of those clients, that means you're paying $120 per new client. And those numbers that we see, they're pretty consistent across most practices. Most practices that we're running Google Ads for, they're signing clients for between $100 to $200, right? So that's how I break it down in terms of, okay, if you're going to be spending this much, these are the average numbers that we see. These are how many clients that you can expect to actually receive back into your practice. For the conversion rate in terms of the consult call, for solo practices, like if sometimes they might struggle a little bit on the consult call, they don't have maybe like a lot of confidence, we also can give them some training so they can improve their consult calls. For group practices, this is one thing that I think you actually kind of already had in place, which is that you had a great intake coordinator. Mm-hmm. So I always recommend for group practices, I know in the beginning, if you're doing them on your own, it can be a little bit time consuming, but the consult calls are super important. And if you can, as soon as you can grow and like hire an intake coordinator for group practice who's really good on the phone, it makes a big difference, right? Where if you're signing, let's say 1 of every 5 clients, but now if you can say, bring that to 1 out of every 3 clients, you can be spending the same amount on the Google ads, but we're earning more just because that intake coordinator, they're very good on the phone, right? Right. So that's in terms of the costs, right? So you're paying a certain amount, you're getting clients coming in. That's how much you're paying for the Google ads to acquire the clients. And then we take a look on the back end. Okay, so what's the return that you're actually getting? So what this is based on then is what's your fee And on average, how many sessions do people stay with you for, right? So there's, in other words, like, what's your retention? I can say, so here's like, again, like a pretty kind of broad example, but let's say if your fee is $150, right? Let's say your private pay, $150. And let's say your retention level is 14 sessions, right? So that means that basically every time that a client signs with you, if they, on average, some clients, they stay for 5 sessions, some clients stay for 20, but the average is 14 sessions. That would mean that on average, whenever you sign a new person, you're earning $2,100, right? The 14 sessions multiplied by the 150, you're earning $2,100. So that's also a good number, even just outside the Google Ads, to know, like, if I ever get a client, I'm earning $2,100 over the lifetime of them being a client. That's just a good number to know. But now even if we bring it back to that $600 per month example. So let's say if we're being conservative, let's say they sign 3 clients per month on that $600. They've paid $200 to get that client. Now they're going to earn over that lifetime of that client $2,100, right? So paying $200 to get back $2,100. So it's very close to like a 10-to-1 return back on investment for every dollar that they put in. And then you can even times that by the number of clients per month. So if they spend $600 to get 3 clients, so 2,100 times 3, so they're earning then $6,300 back for that month, right? The main thing to remember is just always, when, like I always tell us the therapist, is that you're not going to get that return back just like in that first month. It's, you spend $600, you got those 3 clients, and then over the next 3 or 4 months, that's when you're going to see the full return back, right? And then that return back, again, you're doing it for every single month. So let's see if that therapist, if they run ads for, let's say, for 5 months, right? If they run ads for 5 months, so if they sign 3 clients, so by the 5 months, that means they'll have signed 15 clients. So the return back of that 6,300, if we then times that again by 5, so that's like about $30,000 coming back from what they've spent on the Google Ads, which would be about $3,000. Because again, that 10-to-1. So that's like that return back, when you really get the Google Ads working really well, it's beautiful. It's honestly an amazing thing to see, to get that return coming back. And for group practice owners, like it's a little bit different because you're filling up the caseloads of your clinicians, but you're also spending a lot more. You're actually getting a lot more. So I can tell you, like, the average group practice owner that works with us, when they're doing Google Ads, they add on an average of 15 to 20K per month for their revenue, right? When they're running the Google Ads. So that's like the return back that I kind of explain to people, just in terms of to visualize it. I'm paying for clients, that's how much I'm getting back.
Yeah. I mean, it was a hurdle that I had to get across for sure, because it's, it's like, it's a very big picture type of thing. You're not, like you were saying, it's not this immediate, you're not going to see it right away. But it, to me, like, as you were talking, one of the things I was thinking of is you get back your time, and it's like peace of mind, right? So as a business owner, once I saw it working, I didn't have to worry about my clinicians being full, and I could focus more on, let's just do the clinical piece, right? Like, let's get really good and stay good clinically. I didn't have to, like, it was almost like the marketing piece was just this well-oiled machine, and I didn't have to constantly. So it's, and the return on, the, just from a dollar sense, obviously, that's once it's all those pieces working together, like you said, and the intake coordinator, I'm glad that you brought up, that is really important. All those pieces working together and continuing to work together, then, you're not really thinking about the money, because you are getting, it is so well worth it. You are getting that return on investment. So to me, it was a really smart move to grow my practice, and it worked really well, really quickly, to where I had to hire therapists to deal with all the demand. Okay, here's a question. Let's say it's, for some people, so some people are going to say, I tried it and it didn't work, right? It just didn't work. So why do some people get results with Google Ads and some don't? What do you think, in your experience, is maybe key difference?
Yeah, so I would even say for me, like the majority of therapists that when they reach out to me, they mention the same thing. Like they tried Google Ads in the past before, either by themselves or maybe even by hiring someone, they didn't see results. The way I look at it is that Google Ads, they're a skill set, right? It's a skill set, just like, let's say, playing the guitar or playing a sport or picking up any kind of hobby. Like you're going to get better at it as time goes by and the more people that you work with. So if you're a therapist and you're trying to do it on your own, you kind of have this innate disadvantage, which is that you don't have this experience of doing it for all these past people before. It's like you're doing it for the first time. It's like picking up a guitar for the very first time, trying to play Stairway to Heaven or some like complex song. It's not working. And you're like, this guitar doesn't work. Or Google that. Like, it's not the guitar. It's just your skill isn't there yet. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is like a skill set. And so even sometimes with therapists, when they work with agencies before, has that agency worked with therapists? Do they know about HIPAA? Like, do they know about how to write copy for therapists, what the website should look like? Have they just run Google Ads? Like, there's going to be a steep learning curve for that agency too, if they haven't worked with therapists before. So that would kind of be like the skill set of it. And then what goes into that, like it's learning how to build out campaigns, learning how to structure your ad groups, your keywords, how to write ads. And then even kind of like if you dive more into that, like I would say that there's like three big reasons. Like big reason number one is that most therapists, their website isn't yet, I would say, like good enough or looks good enough to be effective with Google Ads. And so that's kind of what I mentioned before, is that like if you're spending with money with Google Ads and you're like, I think my Google Ads account is really good, but what does your website look like? Right? Because that's the thing that people see. They click it, they go to your website. If your website really isn't up to par, if it doesn't look that great, if it doesn't have great copywriting on it, if they don't recognize immediately like this is what you're marketing for, they're going to bounce. They're going to leave. They're going to go and search something else. So you're just going to have not a lot of people reach out. Like your Google Ads, they're only ever as good as your website. So if you have a great looking website and you run Google Ads, that's a very good place to be in. The second thing I would say, again, it's kind of like the most common things I see is that usually for therapists, they don't spend enough in Google Ads, right? So again, let's say they have the good website, maybe they even have some good Google Ads, but they're not spending enough. Again, you're just not going to see any kind of traction. Like for solo therapists, always I recommend at least be spending $500 to $600. If you can spend more, again, there's like per month. For group practices, if you have like multiple clinicians, start at 1,000. But if you have even more, let's go to 1,200 to 1,500, because just based on the numbers, you're not going to see results unless you're spending above a certain threshold. Like that's really, really important. A lot of times therapists ask me like, what if I just spend $100, $200? I'm like, you might get a client once every 2 months. And in that case, it's almost better to just not even use the Google Ads. Like you need to be spending a certain amount. Also, because this is kind of interesting part about Google Ads, they have ways of increasing the number of people reaching out to you using different bidding strategies, right? So what Google does is they take a look at the data from people who are already reaching out to you, and they'll give you these different bidding strategies. Like let's say they're called maximize conversions. Okay. So if I turn on this bidding strategy, Google's going to go out and it's going to show your ads more to people. It's going to bid higher on people who are more likely to reach out to you. Right. So you end up getting, let's say if you're spending, let's say $1,000 per month, your cost per lead, you might get many more leads on that just by turning on this switch. It's really, really powerful, but you have to have a certain threshold of data. You need to have at least 10, 15, 20 people reaching out to you every single month before you can really turn that on and have it be effective. So I would say, yeah, for therapists, like not spending enough, and then also not spending for long enough, right? They try Google Ads for just like a month, they don't see a result, and they're like, oh, it must not work. Like Google Ads, even though I would say they're definitely like the fastest way of getting clients to reach out to you, they still take a bit of time. They still take a bit of time to improve. And so the first month might be okay, but the second month is better, the third month is better, and the fourth month, usually by the fourth month, you can get your ads like pretty well optimized, we call it, to where they're working the most effectively, right? To where you're getting that 3 to 4 clients being signed per month. But if you were to just do it for a month, just be like, here, let me just try it out, and you're not seeing the results, like that's kind of to be expected. Like the first month is really just more of a testing phase, and then you prove it month after month. So those big things. And then I also say like kind of like the last thing again would just be the strategy. Like most therapists, when they go into their Google Ads, they just try to market for every single one of their niches, like every single one of thing that they want to market for. They do it anxiety, depression, couples, and that spreads out their budget way too thin. Like they were just each keyword might only get like one click every couple of weeks, and they're just not getting enough data to actually see what's actually working. So I'm like, when people work with me, they're kind of surprised. Like we really narrow it down. Just focus. Let's focus on one, maybe two niches. Let's maximize that. Let's get all the clients we can for that. And then once you have that return coming back in, okay, now let's move towards the other things. But for those reasons, that's why I see most people when they're trying to do Google Ads. That's where, yeah, I know it's frustrating, but if you can work with, like, say, a specialist, an expert in it, that's where you're going to tend to see the better results coming in.
Yeah, no, and I remember you coaching me about this, kind of like the expectation, right? What to expect, and that, and how the algorithm starts to, it starts to learn, and you start to get better and better and better, and that's that. It only, like, it just is like a momentum, and that's really, really powerful. But it also needs to be focused, right? So, and that's the thing that you're good at helping with. So I've got a question in the chat from Rob, and I'm going to just say it. And Rob is, if you can kind of just wave, so he's right here. And what his question is, and I love this question, and this is helpful. I never know if my content is good. Tips or direction for ensuring good content. So I'm assuming, Rob, you're talking about web content, or, yeah.
So for the content, I could answer it in one of two ways. The first thing would be to have, like, let's say, a professional copywriter like look over it. But also what you can do is, like, I would show that piece of content to someone, like anybody you know, and just ask them, like, when you read this, what do you feel? Like, do you feel this resonating with you? Okay. And it works especially well if you can find someone who's going through that, right? But a lot of the way you can hear that is through the feedback that you're getting with clients that you sign. You know, a lot of times I hear with the therapists that we work with that when they sign on clients are telling them, like, I read over your website and it spoke exactly to me. Like, the pains that I was going through, I saw them on your website and it made me feel like, yeah, this person knows exactly what I'm going through. So in terms of, like, whether or not your content is good, that's kind of, you could say, from more like the subjective side of things, right? With the Google Ads and the actual conversion data, it becomes a little bit more just by the metric, right? Where, let's say, if we can run ads to two different pages at once, right? That's called the A/B split testing, right? So I can run ads to, like, so half the people go to one page, half the people go to another page. And we'll do this sometimes to test different content out. Sometimes some content that's more emotionally focused, going towards the pains, what that person's going through, it's more narrative style. We'll test that out versus going to more like a feature and benefits. Like, why should they work with this practice? Well, they have many different clinicians. They don't have a wait list. Maybe they had to take different kinds of insurances. So that you can kind of split test and see which one actually gets better results from the Google Ads. And that will give you kind of like a more of a metric kind of thing. So both those ways, I would say, are ways of determining, like, how good is your actual content.
This is a really important piece. So I'm going to stay here a little bit longer, and thank you, Rob, for bringing it up. And what I'm hearing you say, Andrew, is that there's lots of places that we're looking at content, the ads themselves, the website, and the landing page, right? And you may not know this, but EFT, we're all about the felt sense. So this is a group of mainly EFT clinicians. And so when you said, do they feel it? I was like, we know how to do that. Like, that's exactly what we do. And so that's the whole goal, right? You want whoever's reading the content, and this is something that you taught me, Andrew, is the content isn't about necessarily who you are and what you do and what you're, the therapist, what you're good at, or kind of like all your experience at, it's about who's reading it. So I think one thing, the way that you helped me, Andrew, is you said, imagine, just think of your past clients, right? Like, what have they told you? What do they say? Like, how do they describe their pain? Use their words. And so that's how you write that content, is you say exactly, it's like you're imagining their experience and you're just describing it. And then, later you're offering, you're building it to where it's like you're offering hope, right? And this is what this could look like. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, like I was gonna say it's the exact same thing. And I think sometimes it can become even like challenging when, let's say you're trying to write about a modality, like let's say you're trying to write about like EMDR. And like when I think about writing about EMDR, like I'm thinking about like just like a laundry list, like all these different things, like how it helps, what the percentage rate is, all this effectiveness. But really, when someone's looking at EMDR, like probably they have some form of trauma that they're maybe looking at working on. So, and then even then, it's not about thinking, okay, well, where does trauma come from? If you can just, all right, like I've had, let's say 10 clients before, they've had trauma. What were the exact things that they were telling me? If you write those things down, chances are the people who then read that page, they're going to have a very similar experience. And as a therapist, right, the thing that gets someone wanting to work with you, it's the belief that you can help them get the results, right? That's really what it comes down to. It's that trust to say, okay, if I reach out to this therapist, can they help me get the result? Like cost is secondary, insurance is secondary. It's can they help me achieve this certain results? And as therapists, there's a lot of rules like not using testimonials and all that kind of stuff on your pages. So the way you have to really like demonstrate that expertise is by just like describing what they're going through to a T. If you can do that, it tells them that, okay, this therapist, they have worked with many other people in my position before. If they've worked with people in my position before, chances are that they've helped them. Therefore, they can help me. Therefore, I'll reach out to them. So it's like there's like a lot of like backward steps, but that's pretty much what it does. If you can describe their problem, they recognize, oh, this person, they're using my language. They know what they're talking about. They're going to want to reach out to you then.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Expertise. So it's a little bit like counterintuitive, right? Instead of saying, of course, somewhere on the website, it's going to have like your license and your credentials and but that's not how you get someone to work with you. It's here's how I see what you're going through, right? It's like this, you feel this way, and this happens, and you get stuck in this way, and
Yeah.
Oh, and that's, we do that in therapy, Andrew. This is what we do. This is how we work. And so it's like, just do that on the website.
Yeah.
Right. I love it. But yeah, when people have a felt sense, you really get me and you get my specific problem, then that tells them, you know what you're doing. You can handle this. You've seen this before. And it's much more compelling. That's a huge piece of this. And that's not just on the website, but it's the Google ads themselves. And I thought that was interesting, the A/B testing, how you've got one piece that's more narrative, like what we're talking about, and then another that's more like service, like, no wait line and virtual and, all these. And you're just kind of maybe using a combination of both, or just seeing what works.
Exactly. Yeah. And then like for the Google ads, because there's also, you could say like the marketing or the writing that's like when somebody actually sees the ad themselves to get them to actually go and they click and go toward the website too. There's a piece of even of I guess you could say like copywriting skill within that. But I would also say it's really more the website that does the job of getting that person to buy in, right? Once they can read the sites and they really go through it thoroughly, yes, there are going to be some people who skim, right? So sometimes I hear therapists the way kind of worried, like, isn't this a lot of writing? Won't people just skim it? It's like, yeah, like there's going to be some people who skim it. Those are not going to be the people who reach out. But the people who do, like maybe that 10 to 20% who like really buy into it, they're going to read the full thing. Those are the people who are going to actually be the ones who reach out and become the clients. So you don't want to make your website for everybody, right? Make for the people who are going to really buy into it. And there's certain design that goes into that. But those people who don't skim it, those are the ones that reach out to you and they're like, wow, you like really spoke towards me. Those are the ones you're kind of aiming for.
Yeah, I'm going to say something that's maybe a little bit controversial. And if you guys do this, I'm not judging you. This is just like what I've noticed. I've noticed on therapists' websites, they say, I work with bullet points, anxiety, depression, trauma, parenting, blah, blah, blah. And it's just listing all these bullet points. And I get it. It's like, I do work with all of that, right? And I want you to know, if you see one of these words, right, that I can help you. But I think that's what it's doing the opposite of what we're talking about, right? So it's like they're not really feeling that you get their pain. And so when you do this in a more narrative way and really imagine your ideal client, right? And what they're going through and put words to that. I don't know, is this helping, Rob, to kind of answer that question that you have? Any other, if you want to unmute yourself, any
Yeah, no, this is helpful. It's always been my struggle just trying to figure out like how to speak to a client, and then also as a group, how do I help my employees speak to clients, and like how does it all fit? Because we do a few different specialties, so it's always been tricky. And it always feels like there's never like the one answer. It's always like do it and try to speak to them and then kind of see what happens. And so I'm always just craving like that's how you do it. It just is what it is, I think. No, this is helpful.
good.
And also just on that, so I will also say, so for a group practice, there is a slight difference, which is that for group practice, because you have to market the benefits of working with the group practice itself, I always say there's kind of like two different kinds of group practices. There are groups that also are niche based. So you can have like, let's say a couples counseling focused group practice, trauma focused group. So those practices on their websites, they have to make it very apparent that that's what they specialize in. So that does some of the positioning for you. So somebody lands on the website, even if they're not like, I'm not sure who they're going to work with, the fact that the practice as a whole specializes in trauma, that kind of just does the job for you. But then let's say if you're kind of a practice that has many different clinicians with many different specialties, right? That itself has to become the benefit too. So when I was talking about the A/B split testing, the features for group practices like that, that's also part of what we have to market for, which is we're a group practice. And the benefit of working with us is once you reach out to us, we'll be able to fit you in with the right therapist to meet your needs. You know, we have a couples counseling clinician, we have an EMDR clinician. So if you reach out to us, not only we're a group practice, like we work together, we speak with each other, that we were helping all of our clients get better results, but also we have the right therapist for you, right? So you can always find the benefit, the way of positioning it. But for group practices, yeah, it is like just like a little bit different depending on what kind of group practice that you have.
Hopefully that's something new, Rob, that you haven't heard before. That's a good one. That just by being so diverse, right? That itself is your position. I love that, Andrew. Okay. What would you say? What could somebody expect? Right? What are the typical kind of results that people see?
So I'll tell you, so in terms of the Google ads, I think I did kind of mention, yeah. So usually if they're solo based therapists, we want them to be spending at least $600 per month. Based upon that, they should be signing 3 to 4 new clients per month. That's going to allow them to get their practice booked out. And then with the Google ads, it allows them to maintain that full caseload. With group practices, we don't just have the goal of let's get the clinicians caseloads full, but also now can you look at hiring more people as well? So the average solo therapist that works with us, they add on average $6,000 to $8,000 per month to their revenue. For the group practice, usually it's between 15 and 20,000. With the group practice, the nice thing is, again, like that can be scaled higher, right? Once you get your clinicians full and you have this demand coming in, now if you add on another therapist and another therapist, your income can continue to climb. For solo therapists, it does kind of get capped out. But the other thing you can do is if you're a solo therapist, you can also then look at increasing your rates. So that's another thing I kind of encourage my solo therapists is it's a lot easier to raise your rates once you already have a full caseload, because you don't have that fear of, oh, if I don't sign this person, then I'm not going to fill up my caseload. I'm going to be down. Once you have a full caseload, and let's say you have someone reach out to you, if you increase your fee by say $50, there's a different kind of confidence in your voice. There's a little bit more of like, even if they don't sign, it's totally okay. And that kind of like wanting it, but not needing it is a very good energy. And they tend to sign at that higher price. So for solo-based therapists, our goal is like, let's get the caseload booked out. Then from there, can you increase the fee by say $25, $50? Do it gradually. You don't have to take big jumps. But those are the typical results that we see from our practices.
Yeah. And, just to give you guys kind of a real life example, after 4 months of working with Andrew, I guess 3 to 4 months, I doubled my group practice income. And then now, and I don't know how much, what are we, like a year out, 2 years, year and a half? I don't know, something like that. I've doubled it again. So it's, and we, he got me to a good place. And it's like, we don't meet monthly, or we're not like on an ongoing basis. He got it going for me. And now, Jeff and I together, we maintain it. But it just continued to grow. And so now it's like, I just have the choice. Do I want to hire more? Do I like where I am? Like, it's very, very nice. Okay, we've got one more question. Oh, love this question. Okay, we're wrapping up. We've got 10 minutes left. I want to get to this question, and then I want to give everybody the practical of how they can find you, Andrew, and kind of next steps for working with you. But what are some examples of when ads are not a good idea? What would you say? Like, do you ever say no?
Yeah. So I would say if you're just starting out and you don't have the funds of, let's say, if you're a solo-based therapist, $600 to be spending per ads on every single month, that's when I wouldn't do it, right? Or if it's like that, if you can't commit to spending that much per month, then I think you need to build out more with the other methods before you get to that point, right? Use Facebook groups, use listservs, do more networking, get towards that point to where you can afford to spend on them. And then you can make it really happen, because that's the worst thing, is when you're putting some money into Google Ads, but not enough, and you're like not seeing that traction. You have to be able to spend enough. And also I would say is you really want to make sure, and it's something I do work with therapists on, but make sure you have a decent idea of what your niche is, of what your specialty is. So I wouldn't say that's not a reason to not reach out, but I would say also a big thing is addictions. So addiction and substance abuse. I know this is like a big thing. A lot of therapists do this, but those kinds of ads are actually not permitted by Google anymore. So you can't market for addiction or substance abuse therapy. There were some bad actors in the past that were like using Google Ads for that. And so Google has like severely restricted it. So if someone comes to me for that, I'll basically recommend to them, like, look, let's see what other kind of niches and specialties that we can focus on. You can probably get clients organically from other methods for those kind of niches. So those are kind of the two big things. And yeah, that's, I would say, is about it. But if you can spend the amount, you have a good idea of what your niche is, then it's a pretty good opportunity to use the Google Ads.
That's good. That's helpful, just to kind of, for people to make a decision point. So if someone wanted to work with you, and you have to, I want to check in about this, because it might not be exactly the same as when I worked with you. I feel like your business model has shifted a little bit, but maybe I could be wrong about that. But what are next steps? And what is it, what does it look like? Do you have a team, Andrew, or is it just you? Or
Yeah. So in terms of service, it's actually pretty similar to what we were doing with you back then. So we're doing all the Google Ads. It's just that we've added more onto it. It's like in order to provide like that better experience. So if someone wanted to reach out to us, so if you want some more information, if you go to practicecultivator.com, check out my website. You can book in a strategy session directly with me. You can also email me, andrew@practicecultivator.com. And our very first step is like, we'd have a consultation call where I just see like, can we help you, right? Is your practice in a place where you can spend enough, where we could actually get you the results? If we determine that we can, then we'd move forward with it.
Yeah, simple as that. Okay, so Jeff's putting it in the chat for everybody, practicecultivator.com. And then it's Andrew at practicecultivator.com. And I want to tell you what made me choose Andrew. So I had someone that was terrible. It was a bit of a scam, honestly. It was the contract, took my money, really did nothing. And so I was like, oh, so scared. So I actually interviewed several people and was really picky because I didn't want that to happen to me again. But something that I appreciated about you, Andrew, and this at least was on your website, maybe it still is, but you tell the story of how you decided to do this work, and you personally were greatly benefited from therapy. And so this was how you found this niche, working for therapists. And so that's meaningful. And then also, I appreciate that you're not a therapist. because there are lots and lots of therapists having with the side hustle of Google Ads, and they really just want to be a therapist, right? And so it's like, it's really not the best partnership, I don't think. But with you, I was relieved to know that you were interested in the field of therapy, that you had some motivation there, but you weren't therapist, that because you're very much like a data analyst. I mean, you are very, you know, that overthinking that you talked about. I mean, you are just kind of always, you know, you're very sharp in thinking about the next step. So I also really loved how responsive you were and engaged the whole time. You know, this is not my, you know, the technical realm is, you know, I'm a therapist, right? And so this is really not, but I never felt intimidated or stupid. You know, when I had the questions, you kind of could explain it to me in a way that I could understand and feel confident, and not have to just blindly trust. So I really appreciate working with you, and any of you that have a chance, you know, please reach out. And I hope that just by listening to Andrew talk today, you at least got, you know, got your wheels turning about how you might want to implement this, whether it's reaching out to Andrew specifically, or maybe changing your copy on your website, or, you know, all those good tools. Any last words, Andrew?
I just want to say thanks for having me on board. Usually it's me in your position also interviewing people, so it feels odd to be this side. There's a little bit more pressure, I will say. But no, thanks for having me on board. Like, thanks for giving me the opportunity to kind of share a bit more what we do. I could talk about ads all day, so anytime I have a chance, like, I'm just happy to share with whatever I can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, your expertise is so valued, really, really, really. So I appreciate you being here, kind of giving your time. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. Thanks for being with us. This will be recorded, so I'll put it back on the website. So if you want to listen back, you know, you can certainly do that. And I think that's it. Bye for now, everybody.
Awesome. See you.
All right.